The waitress's quick, practiced hands halted abruptly when she caught sight of an elderly woman outside, alone, trembling, fighting the snow with a shovel in the unforgiving cold. Her hunched back, ashen skin and blue-tinted lips made the waitress's heart lurch. Without hesitating, she begged for a 5-minute break, spent her very last $5 on a cup of hot ginger tea, and ran outside to help her, never suspecting that the frail old woman in the snow was the very person who would soon pull her out of the storm of her life. Before we continue, tell us what time it is and where you're watching from, subscribe and hype because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. One frozen morning in Portland, a waitress made a choice that would crack open her entire world. Let us know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe because this story might just remind you why kindness still matters. The diner door hadn't stopped swinging all morning. Lila Grant moved on muscle memory. Coffee pot in one hand, order pad in the other, smile plastered on, rinse and repeat. 3 years at Benson's Diner had turned her into a machine. Outside, Portland drowned in snow. Fat flakes fell thick and relentless, piling up on car hoods, sidewalks, everything. Inside was warm, but that warmth never quite reached Lila. Her fingers were raw and cracked. The walk here, 3 neighborhoods on foot at 4 a.m., had been brutal. But rent didn't pay itself, and bus fare added up fast. Excuse me. Hello. Lila turned, table 6. A woman in an expensive coat, phone in one hand, barely looking up. This coffee's cold. The woman pushed the mug forward like it personally offended her. What kind of place is this? Lila's chest tightened. The coffee wasn't cold. She'd poured it 2 minutes ago. But she smiled anyway. That thin, practiced smile that said I'm sorry without actually apologizing. I'll get you a fresh one right away, ma'am. Make it fast. I don't have all day. Lila took the mug and walked back to the counter. Her reflection caught in the metal coffee dispenser. Tired eyes. Hair pulled back tight. That worn scarf around her neck. Her mother's scarf. The edges were frayed now, but it was all she had left. You can be poor, baby, her mother used to say. But don't ever let your kindness freeze up inside you. She poured the new coffee, added cream without being asked. She remembered this woman from last week. Same order, same attitude. When she set it down, the woman didn't even look up from her phone. No thank you. No eye contact. Nothing. Lila stepped back, that familiar feeling settling in her stomach. Invisible. That's what she was to most people here. A waitress, a body that brought food and took plates away. Not a person with a name, with a life, with a mother she'd buried 2 years ago. Lila, Harper's voice boomed from the kitchen pass-through. He was a big man with a bigger voice, but he wasn't mean, just always rushing. We got a lunch rush coming. Need you sharp, girl. I'm on it, she called back, forcing brightness into her voice. She wiped down table 3, cleared table 7, refilled coffee at table 9. Her legs ached, her back ached, but she kept moving, because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering how small her bank account was. How the landlord's last warning had been 3 days ago. The door chimed again. More cold air rushed in, carrying snow and noise. A group of businessmen, laughing loud, shaking off their coats like they owned the place. Sweetheart, can we get some service over here? One of them called out, not bothering to wait for a host. Lila grabbed menus and headed over. Good afternoon, gentlemen. What can I? Just coffee for now. Black, all of us. He didn't look at her face, just her name tag. Coming right up. As she walked away, she heard one of them mutter, "Service is slow here." She'd been there for 10 seconds. Her hands shook slightly as she grabbed the coffee pot. Not from anger, she couldn't afford anger. From exhaustion, from being seen but not really seen, from existing in a space where she was useful but never visible. Through the window, the snow kept falling. People rushed past, heads down, collars up. Everyone trying to escape the cold, everyone in their own world, and Lila kept pouring coffee, kept smiling, kept being the invisible girl in the corner of their busy lives. The lunch rush blurred together. Lila moved between tables on autopilot, refilling coffee, taking orders, clearing plates. Her mind was somewhere else, stuck on bills, on the landlord's last warning, on how much was left in her account after buying groceries yesterday. She had $43 total, $5 in cash, $38 in her account. That's it, until Friday. She wiped down a table, her hands moving while her thoughts spiraled. The electric bill was due. If she paid it, she couldn't pay rent. If she paid rent, they'd shut off her power. Her eyes drifted to the window without really seeing. Just staring out at the white blur of falling snow, the gray shapes of people passing by. Then she saw her. An old woman stood on the sidewalk across the street, bent over a snow shovel. Her coat was thin, too thin. The kind you'd wear on a cool autumn day, not in the middle of a Portland blizzard. She moved slowly, scraping snow from the sidewalk in front of a closed shop. Snow kept falling. The pile she'd cleared was already filling in again. Lila watched. A man in a business suit approached. He saw the old woman, stepped wide around her, didn't slow down. Then a young couple, they laughed at something on a phone, nearly bumped into the woman. The guy said something sharp. The old woman stumbled back. They kept walking. Lila orders up. She blinked, pulled herself back. Coming, but her eyes drifted to the window again as she picked up plates. The old woman was still there. Still shoveling. A gust of wind hit and she staggered, catching herself on the shovel handle. Nobody stopped. A teenager walked past, earbuds in, eyes on his phone. An older man crossed the street to avoid her completely. A woman with shopping bags actually said something. Lila couldn't hear it, but the dismissive wave of her hand said enough. Get out of my way. The old woman bent down to pick up something, a scarf that had fallen. Before she could grab it, someone's boot landed right on it. They didn't notice, just kept walking, grinding it into the slush. Lila's chest went tight. You good? She turned. Harper stood at the counter, looking at her with raised eyebrows. Yeah, she gestured toward the window. That woman out there. She's been shoveling in this cold for, not our problem, kid. Harper's voice wasn't mean, just practical. He'd seen too much to get involved in everything. You got tables, I know, but table 6 wants their check. Table 9 needs ketchup. Lila nodded. She grabbed the ketchup bottle, delivered it with a smile she didn't feel, printed the check for table 6. But she kept looking out that window. The old woman had moved further down the sidewalk now, still shoveling, still alone. A delivery truck rumbled past, spraying slush. It hit her. She turned away, wiping her face with her sleeve. Not one person stopped to ask if she was okay. Snow can be cold, Lila thought. But people are colder. She remembered her mother working as a custodian at that office building downtown. Coming home with stories about how people talked over her, walked past her, treated her like furniture. They don't see us, baby, her mother had said once, sitting at their kitchen table with swollen feet. To them we're just part of the scenery. That old woman outside, she was scenery too. Something to step around. Something in the way. Lila's hands clenched around the coffee pot. A businessman pushed through the diner door, shaking snow from his coat. Jesus. It's brutal out there. They really should clear these sidewalks better. Almost tripped over some old bag with a shovel. He laughed, actually laughed. Lila's stomach twisted. She wanted to say something. Wanted to tell him that old bag was a human being, freezing and struggling while he complained about almost tripping. But she just smiled. Sit anywhere you'd like, sir. He took table 5, ordered coffee. Complained it was too hot. Through the window, the old woman's scarf, the one that had fallen, was now just a dirty rag in the snow. Trampled. Forgotten. Just one person, Lila thought. One person could stop and help. One person could change this. She looked around the diner, warm, full. People eating, laughing, scrolling through phones. Outside an old woman worked alone in the freezing cold. And the world just kept moving. Lila set down the coffee pot. Her hand went to the scarf around her own neck. Her mother's scarf, the last thing she had to remember her by. Her mother would have stopped. Her mother would have done something. Harper, her voice came out steadier than she felt. I need to take 5 minutes. He looked up from the grill. Now, we're slammed. 5 minutes. Please, something in her face made him pause. Then he sighed. 5. That's it. Lila nodded. She was already reaching for the hot water kettle, because someone had to stop, and if no one else would, then it had to be her. Her last $5 in cash sat on the counter in front of her. Rent money. Bus fare. Dinner for the next 2 days. All of it right there in one crumpled bill. She stared at it for 3 seconds. Then she picked it up. 1 ginger tea to go. Harper glanced up from the grill. You buying? Yeah? He didn't ask why, just made the tea, hot water, fresh ginger, a squeeze of lemon honey. The kind of drink that warmed you from the inside out. Lila wrapped her hands around the paper cup. Heat seeped through to her cold fingers. She grabbed her thin jacket from the hook. You're going out there? Harper stared at her like she'd lost her mind. In this, 5 minutes, you said. Lila, but she was already pushing through the door. The cold hit her like a fist. Wind tore through her jacket, cut straight through to her bones. Snow stung her face, her breath came out in white clouds. God, it's freezing. Across the street, the old woman had stopped shoveling. She leaned against the building wall, shoulders hunched, trying to catch her breath. Lila's feet crunched through the snow, each step felt harder than the last. The wind pushed against her, her fingers were already going numb around the cup. Just keep walking. Just get there. A car rushed past, spraying slush. Some of it hit her jeans. The cold soaked through immediately. She kept going. The old woman looked up as Lila approached. Her face was weathered, lined with age and exhaustion. Her lips had a blue tint. Her hands shook, even though they were wrapped around the shovel handle. Ma'am? The woman blinked confused. People didn't stop. People didn't talk to her. I brought you this. Lila held out the cup. It's ginger tea, still hot. Please drink it. The old woman stared at the cup, like it might disappear if she reached for it. I don't have money to. It's not for sale. Lila pressed it into her hands. It's a gift. It's cold out here. Dangerous cold. You need to warm up. The woman's fingers wrapped around the cup. Her whole body seemed to relax at the heat. Why would you? Her voice cracked. Nobody ever, everyone deserves to be seen. Lila said quietly. Everyone deserves to be cared for. The old woman's eyes filled with tears. She brought the cup to her lips with trembling hands and took a sip. Then another. Steam rose between them, a small cloud of warmth in the frozen air. Thank you, the woman whispered. So few people, they just walk past like I'm not even here. Lila knew that feeling. Lived it every single day in that diner. I see you, she said simply. The wind howled around them. Snow swirled. Lila's teeth were starting to chatter, but she didn't move. Not yet. The old woman looked at her. Really looked at her. Something shifted in her expression. Recognition maybe. Or understanding. What's your name, child? Lila, Lila Grant. That's a beautiful name. The woman took another sip, holding the cup close like it was the most precious thing in the world. Thank you, Lila, not just for the tea, for stopping, for seeing an old woman who everyone else walks right past. Are you okay out here? Do you need? I'll be fine now. Thanks to you. The woman smiled, and despite the cold, despite the exhaustion, it was genuine, warm. You have a kind heart. Don't ever lose that. Lila felt something catch in her throat. Her mother used to say the same thing. If Mom could see me now, she'd be proud. Stay warm, okay? Lila touched the woman's shoulder gently. Please, I will. And you too, dear. Get back inside before you freeze. Lila nodded. She turned to go, her jacket already soaked through, her body shaking from the cold. Lila, she looked back. The old woman was still holding the cup with both hands, steam rising around her face like a halo. Kindness like yours is rare. Rarer than you know. Lila managed a small smile, then hurried back across the street. The diner door felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She pushed through it, and the warmth hit her all at once. Her fingers burned as feeling came back. Harper looked up. You're insane, you know that. Maybe. She was shivering so hard she could barely talk. But I couldn't just watch. That tea was $5. I know, that was all you had. I know. Harper shook his head, but something softened in his face. He grabbed a towel. Dry off, then get back to work before I regret being nice. Lila took the towel, rubbing her wet hair. Through the window she could see the old woman still standing there, holding the cup, drinking slowly. For just a moment, their eyes met across the distance. The woman raised the cup slightly. A gesture, a thank you. Lila raised her hand in return. Then she turned away, tied her apron back on, and went back to work. She was broke, freezing, exhausted. But something in her chest felt warm. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she'd done something that mattered. Maybe kindness is never wrong, she thought. Maybe it just takes courage to hold on to it. Outside the snow kept falling, but in that moment, the world felt a little less cold. She'd picked up an extra shift, so she didn't leave until 9 p.m. Lila's feet screamed with every step as she walked home. The snow had stopped, but the cold hadn't.
Yes.
It pressed down on the city like a weight. Her breath came out in short white puffs. Her fingers were numb inside her thin gloves. The neighborhood looked different at night. Darker, emptier. The streetlights threw long shadows across the snow-covered sidewalks. Most of the shops were closed, metal gates pulled down, graffiti tags sprayed across them. She passed a group of guys on a corner. They didn't bother her. She was a regular face here. Just another tired worker walking home. Her building stood at the end of the block. A 3-story structure with cracked windows and a front door that didn't lock properly. The hallway smelled like old cooking oil and mildew. Stairs creaked under her weight as she climbed to the second floor. Apartment 2B. Home. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. The cold hit her immediately. No heat. The radiator had been broken for a week, and the landlord kept saying he'd fix it tomorrow. They hadn't had the money to hire a repairman. It was either food or heat, and food always won. Tomorrow never came. That you, Lila? Her roommate Tessa sat on the couch wrapped in 2 blankets, breath visible in the cold air. The only light came from a small lamp in the corner. They were trying to keep the electric bill down. Yeah, it's me. Lila dropped her bag by the door. Her whole body ached. Rough day, aren't they all? Tessa pulled the blanket tighter. There's half a sandwich in the fridge if you're hungry. Turkey, I saved it for you. Lila's stomach clenched. She was starving had been since lunch. You didn't eat dinner. I ate. This is extra. It wasn't extra. Tessa was lying. They both knew it, but Lila was too tired to argue. She went to the tiny kitchen, more of a closet with a hot plate and mini fridge, opened it. The sandwich sat on a paper towel, carefully wrapped. Next to it 3 eggs, a quarter gallon of milk, some wilted lettuce. That was it. That was everything they had until Friday's paycheck. Lila took the sandwich, cut it in half, and brought both pieces to the couch. We're sharing, Lila, I told you. We're sharing. Tessa took the half sandwich without another word. They ate in silence, sitting side by side under the blankets. The cold seeped through everything, the walls, the floor, their clothes. Electric bill came today. Tessa said quietly. Lila stopped chewing. How much? $147, due in 5 days or they shut it off. $147. Lila had $32 in her bank account. Tessa probably had less. We'll figure it out, Lila said, but her voice sounded hollow even to herself. Yeah, Tessa didn't sound convinced. We always do. They finished eating. Tessa went to bed. The bedroom was slightly warmer with the door closed and both of them sharing body heat. But Lila stayed up. She couldn't sleep yet. Too much spinning in her head. She pulled out her notebook, a small spiral-bound thing she'd had since high school. Inside she kept track of everything. Every dollar, every bill, every shift. Rent $650, due in 12 days. Electric $147, due in 5. Phone $45, due in 8. She had $32, would make maybe another $120 by Friday if she picked up an extra shift. The math didn't work. It never worked. Lila's pen hovered over the page. Her hand was shaking not from cold this time, but from something else. Fear maybe, or exhaustion, or both. $5 for that tea. $5 I didn't have. She closed her eyes, saw the old woman's face, heard her voice. Thank you, Lila. Was it worth it? Her mother's voice answered in her head. Kindness is always worth it, baby. Always, but kindness didn't pay bills. Didn't keep the lights on, didn't put food on the table. Lila set down the pen and rubbed her face. God, she was tired. So bone-deep tired that thinking hurt. She lay down on the couch, pulling the thin blanket over herself. The springs dug into her back, she'd gotten used to them years ago. Outside, wind rattled the window. Somewhere down the hall, a baby cried. Just get through tomorrow, she told herself. Then the day after that, just keep going. Sleep came slowly, dragging her down into restless dreams of snow and cold and empty pockets. The sound woke her, something sliding under the door. A soft scraping noise. Lila's eyes opened. The room was dim, early morning light filtering through the dirty window. She checked her phone. 5:47 a.m. She sat up, confused. Who would? Footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, deliberate, moving away, down the stairs, gone. Lila threw off the blanket and stood, shivering in the cold. She walked to the door, looked down. A white envelope lay on the floor. It must have been prepared, late last night. The Doyle Foundation clearly didn't waste time. Her heart started beating faster. She picked it up, turned it over. Thick paper, expensive. The kind you'd use for a wedding invitation or something official. Her name was written on the front in elegant script. Miss Lila Grant. No return address. No stamp. Hand delivered at dawn. What the hell? She whispered. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside, a single card. Heavy cardstock. More elegant handwriting. Miss Grant, your kindness yesterday did not go unnoticed. I would like to meet with you today at noon. Come to the address below. This meeting may change your life if you're brave enough to attend. The choice is yours. MD below that, an address. Downtown, near the Pearl District, the fancy part of the city where Lila never went because everything cost too much. She read it twice, 3 times. The words didn't change. This meeting may change your life. Lila's hand shook. Who was MD? How did they know her name? How did they know where she lived? The old woman, it had to be. But that didn't make sense. That woman had been shoveling snow in threadbare clothes. She'd looked like she had nothing. Unless, no way, Lila breathed. That's crazy, but what else could it be? Lila? Tessa appeared in the bedroom doorway, squinting. Why are you up so early? Lila held up the card. Someone just slid this under our door. What? Tessa was awake now. She crossed the room, took the card, read it. Her eyes went wide. Holy shit, what is this? I don't know. This address, this is downtown, like expensive downtown. Tessa looked at her. Who do you know with this kind of money? Nobody. Then who's MD? I think it might be that woman. The one I gave the tea to yesterday. Tessa stared at her. The homeless lady shoveling snow. She wasn't homeless. I don't think. I mean, maybe she was testing people or something. Testing people. Tessa's voice was flat. Lila, this is Portland. People don't test other people with kindness experiments. They scam them. But what if it's real? What if it's not? Tessa grabbed her shoulders. What if you show up and it's some creep, or a trafficking thing? Or I know it sounds crazy. It doesn't sound crazy. It sounds dangerous. Tessa's grip tightened. Please don't go. Lila looked at the card again. The handwriting was beautiful, careful. The paper felt real, solid. Not some cheap printout. This meeting may change your life. God, she wanted her life to change. Wanted it so badly it physically hurt. Wanted to stop counting pennies, stop choosing between food and heat, stop being invisible. But Tessa was right. This could be anything. A trap, a scam, something worse. I need to think about it, Lila said finally. There's nothing to think about. Don't go. Tessa, promise me you won't go. Lila pulled away gently. I have to get ready for work. Lila, I'll be careful. I promise. She went to the bathroom, closed the door and leaned against it. Her reflection stared back from the cracked mirror. Tired eyes. Worry lines too deep for 27. The card sat on the sink edge, white and pristine against the stained porcelain. If you're brave enough to attend. Her mother's voice whispered in her memory, miracles only come to people brave enough to believe in them, baby. But you got to be smart too. Brave and smart. Brave and smart. Could she be both? Lila splashed cold water on her face. She had 7 hours to decide. She grabbed her phone and texted Harper, "Emergency today. I can't make my shift. I'm really sorry." Harper replied after a minute, "Fine, take care of yourself." 7 hours to choose between playing it safe and taking the biggest risk of her life. Outside, the city was waking up. Car engines, distant sirens, the rumble of the train, and somewhere out there someone was waiting to see if Lila Grant would show up. If she was brave enough, if she was desperate enough, if she still believed that kindness could matter in a world that had given her every reason not to. Lila stood in front of the building at 11:53 a.m., her heart hammered so hard she could feel it in her throat. The address had led her here, a glass tower in the Pearl District, all steel and shine, the kind of building she'd only ever seen from bus windows. The Doyle Foundation was etched into the marble entrance in gold letters. She'd almost turned back 3 times on the train ride over. Tessa's warning still rang in her ears, but something stronger pulled her forward. Curiosity, hope, desperation, maybe all 3. The lobby was enormous. Marble floors so polished she could see her reflection. A massive chandelier hung from the ceiling like frozen light. Everything smelled like money and leather and something floral she couldn't name. A security guard sat behind a desk. He looked up as she approached, taking in her worn coat and second-hand boots. "Can I help you?" His tone said she didn't belong here. "I'm here to see." Lila pulled out the card. "MD, I have an appointment at noon." The guard's expression changed immediately. He straightened. "Miss Grant." "Yes, Miss Doyle left your name in case you decided to come. Take the elevator to the 18th floor. Someone will meet you there." Miss Doyle. So MD was a woman. That confirmed it. The old woman from yesterday. It had to be. Lila's hands were sweating as she crossed to the elevator. The doors opened with a soft chime. She stepped inside, pressed 18. The doors closed and the floor dropped out from under her. The elevator was so smooth she barely felt it move. Soft music played. The walls were mirrored. She caught sight of herself. Nervous eyes, cheap clothes, that scarf around her neck. "I don't belong here." The doors opened on the 18th floor. A woman waited. Mid-50s, perfectly tailored suit, sharp eyes behind designer glasses. "Miss Grant, I'm Patricia, Miss Doyle's executive assistant. Please follow me." They walked down a hallway lined with abstract art. Everything was white and gray and expensive. Their footsteps were silent on the thick carpet. Patricia stopped at a set of double doors. "Miss Doyle will see you now." She opened the doors. The office was huge. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the entire city. The Willamette River stretched out like a ribbon of steel, buildings rising like fingers toward the sky. The furniture was minimal but elegant. A desk, 2 chairs, a small sitting area, and by the window, standing with her back to the door, was the old woman from yesterday. Except she didn't look old anymore. She turned around. The woman wore a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than Lila's entire wardrobe. Her silver hair was styled perfectly. Her posture was straight, commanding. She looked like she belonged on magazine covers in boardrooms at galas. But her eyes, those were the same. Kind, sharp, knowing. "Hello, Lila." Her voice was warm. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." Lila stood frozen in the doorway. You were shoveling snow. In the cold. You're clearly not." She gestured vaguely at everything. The office, the view, the wealth dripping from every surface. "Not what?" The woman walked closer. "Poor, homeless." "Yeah, no, I'm not." She smiled. "My name is Margaret Doyle. I'm the founder and CEO of the Doyle Foundation. We manage charitable giving across the Pacific Northwest. Assets worth about $400 million. Lila felt dizzy. $400 million. She couldn't even imagine that kind of money. "Please, sit." Margaret gestured to the chairs by her desk. Lila sat. Her legs felt shaky. Margaret sat across from her, crossing her legs elegantly. "I imagine you have questions." "Why?" The word burst out. "Why were you out there? Why did you test me?" "Test is a harsh word," Margaret's expression softened, but not entirely inaccurate. Let me tell you a story, Lila, about a woman who built an empire but lost herself in the process. She stood, walked to the window. The city spread out below them. I started this foundation 30 years ago. My husband had just died, cancer very sudden, we had no children. He left me everything, a fortune neither of us had expected. Margaret's voice was steady but something painful lived underneath. I threw myself into work, into giving money away properly, into making a difference. That sounds good, Lila said quietly. It was good. It is good. But somewhere along the way I forgot something important. Margaret turned to face her. I forgot what it felt like to be human, to be vulnerable, to need help and not receive it. She walked back, sat down again. I have everything, Lila. Money, power, respect. People line up to meet with me, to ask for funding, to kiss up and flatter and pretend to care about me personally. Her jaw tightened, but they don't see me. They see my bank account, my influence, my ability to make their problems disappear with a checkbook. Lila thought about the diner, about being invisible to customers who only saw a waitress. I have spent 3 decades meeting with people who claim to care about helping others, Margaret continued. They come with presentations and proposals and promises. They wear expensive suits and use impressive words. They tell me exactly what I want to hear. She leaned forward. But I never know if they mean it. I never know if their kindness is real, or if it's just another performance for my money. So you went out there to find out, Lila said slowly. To see who would help someone who couldn't do anything for them in return. Exactly. Margaret's eyes locked on hers. I stayed out for as long as my body allowed, nearly 2 hours in the cold. Lila shook her head. 1. Margaret's voice broke slightly. In 3 hours in a city of millions you were the only person who stopped. The only one who saw a human being instead of an inconvenience. The only one who gave up something, money you clearly didn't have, to help a stranger. Lila's throat felt tight. I couldn't watch anymore. Everyone was ignoring you. They ignore people like that every day. People like your mother was, I imagine. Lila's head snapped up. How do you know about my mother? After you gave me that tea, I had my emergency response vetting team look into you. They're used to running overnight background checks for urgent grant cases. I hope you don't mind. Margaret's voice was gentle. Your mother, Grace Grant, worked as a custodian for 15 years, died 2 years ago from a heart condition she couldn't afford to treat properly. She raised you alone after your father left, taught you to be kind despite how hard life was. Tears burned Lila's eyes, hearing someone say her mother's name, acknowledge her existence, treat her like she'd mattered. It hurt in a way she hadn't expected. She sounds like she was an extraordinary woman. Margaret said softly. She was. Lila's voice cracked. She was invisible too, just like me, just like you were yesterday, but you saw me, just like you saw your mother, just like you see everyone. Margaret stood and walked to a cabinet. She pulled out a leather folder, brought it back to the desk. I've spent 30 years looking for someone to help me run this foundation. Someone who understands what it means to struggle. Someone whose kindness isn't a strategy or a performance. Someone real. She opened the folder. Inside were documents, papers with official-looking seals. I'm 72 years old, Lila. I don't have forever, and I refuse to leave my life's work to someone who only sees dollar signs. Margaret looked at her directly. I want to offer you a position. Assistant to the CEO. You'll work directly with me, learn how we operate, help decide where our money goes and who we help. Lila's mouth went dry. I don't understand. I'm a waitress. I don't have a degree. I don't know anything about. You know the most important thing. Margaret's voice was firm. You know what it's like to need help. You know what it feels like to be overlooked, and you still chose to be kind when you had every reason not to be. But there must be hundreds of people more qualified. Margaret's laugh was sharp. I've hired qualified people for 30 years. They know spreadsheets and tax codes and grant proposals, but they've never had to choose between buying food or paying rent. They've never been invisible. They don't understand the people we're supposed to help. She pushed the folder toward Lila. This foundation gives away millions of dollars every year to homeless shelters, food banks, community programs, medical clinics. We're supposed to help people who need it most. Don't you think someone who's lived that life should have a say in how we do it? Lila stared at the folder. Her hands trembled. I know this is overwhelming, Margaret said gently. Take your time, read the offer, think about it. But know this, Lila, yesterday, you gave me something I haven't had in years. You gave me hope. Hope that good people still exist, that kindness isn't extinct, that someone out there still cares about strangers in the cold. She reached across the desk and placed her hand over Lila's. You reminded me why I started this work in the first place, and I want you to help me remember every single day going forward. Lila looked up. Margaret's eyes were wet. I'm not offering you a job, Margaret said quietly. I'm offering you a purpose, a chance to help thousands of people who are exactly where you were yesterday, who are scared and struggling, and wondering if anyone sees them. The words hit Lila like a wave. She thought about her mother, about every shift at the diner, about every time she'd been treated like furniture, about Tessa shivering under blankets because they couldn't afford heat. If Mom could see this, she whispered. She can, Margaret said. I believe that, and I think she'd be incredibly proud of the woman you've become. Lila wiped her eyes. Can I really do this? I don't want to mess it up. I don't want to let you down. The fact that you're worried about that tells me everything I need to know. Margaret smiled. You'll learn. I'll teach you. And more importantly, you'll bring something to this work that no amount of education can provide. You'll bring heart. Lila pulled the folder toward her, opened it. The top page showed a salary number that made her dizzy. $65,000 per year. More than double what she made at the diner. More than she'd ever imagined earning. That's just starting, Margaret said. With benefits, health insurance, retirement, everything you need. Health insurance. Lila thought about her mother dying because treatment cost too much. She couldn't form words. Emotions crashed through her. Disbelief, hope, fear, joy, everything at once. You don't have to answer today, Margaret said. Take the weekend. Think it over. Talk to people you trust. Then let me know Monday. But Lila was already shaking her head. I don't need time. Margaret raised an eyebrow. Yes. Lila's voice grew stronger. Yes, I'll do it. I want to do this. I want to help. I want to matter. Margaret's smile transformed her entire face. She came around the desk, and pulled Lila into a hug. You already matter, she whispered. You always have. Now the world is going to know it too. Lila hugged her back, tears streaming down her face. All the exhaustion and fear and struggle of the past 2 years poured out in that embrace. When they pulled apart, Margaret wiped her own eyes, laughing. Look at us. 2 women crying in a corner office. Very professional. Lila laughed too, a real laugh, the first genuine one she'd had in months. When do I start? She asked. Monday, 9 a.m. Patricia will have everything ready for you. I need to give notice at the diner. Already taken care of. I'll make sure Harper is compensated for the inconvenience, and I'll send something extra for your regular customers, the ones who were kind to you. Lila thought of the few regulars who'd learned her name, who'd left decent tips, who'd treated her like a person. Thank you, she breathed. No, Margaret's voice was firm. Thank you, for stopping, for caring, for reminding me that kindness still exists in this world. She walked Lila to the door. One more thing. Margaret gestured to the scarf around Lila's neck. Your mother's. Lila's hand went to it automatically. Yes, never take it off. Not here, not anywhere. It reminds you where you came from. And that matters more than any degree or qualification. Margaret's eyes shone. Your mother raised you right, Lila. She gave you something rare and precious, a kind heart in a cruel world. Don't ever lose that. I won't, Lila promised. Before she left, Margaret pressed an envelope into her hands, an advance on her first paycheck so she could get back on her feet immediately. She left the office in a daze, rode the elevator down, walked out into the cold Portland afternoon. The city looked different. The same buildings, the same streets, the same snow, but different somehow, full of possibility instead of threat. She pulled out her phone and called Tessa. "Lila, are you okay? Where are you?" "I'm downtown. I went to the meeting." "What?" "I told you, Tessa." Lila's voice was steady, calm, happy. "It was real. It was all real. I got a job. A real job. At a foundation, with salary and benefits and—" "Wait, what?" "Slow down." With the advance Margaret had given her, she paid the electric bill in full and bought real groceries. Tessa was silent for a long moment. Then, "Are you serious?" "Completely." "Oh my God, Lila." They both started laughing, crying, talking over each other. People on the street stared at Lila, this young woman standing in the snow, phone to her ear, tears streaming down her face, laughing like she'd won the lottery. In a way, she had. She'd won something better than money. She'd won the chance to matter, to help, to turn her own pain into purpose. As she walked to the train station, Lila looked up at the gray sky. Snow was starting to fall again, light flakes drifting down like blessings. "I hope you're watching, Mom," she whispered. "I hope you're proud." The wind picked up, cold but not cruel. And somewhere in that wind, Lila felt her answer. "I am, baby. I always was." Monday morning, 8:47 a.m., Lila stood in front of the Doyle Foundation again. But this time, everything was different. This time, she wasn't a visitor. She was walking into her new life. She'd spent the weekend in a blur, told Harper she was leaving. He'd been shocked but happy for her. Cried with Tessa, called the electric company, and paid the bill in full. Bought real groceries, milk, eggs, fresh vegetables, meat that wasn't discounted because it was about to expire. It felt like breathing after being underwater for years. Now she wore the best outfit she owned. Black pants from Goodwill, a white blouse Tessa had helped her iron, her mother's scarf tucked carefully around her neck. Her hands shook as she pushed through the revolving door. The security guard from Friday looked up and smiled. "Morning, Miss Grant. Welcome to the Doyle Foundation." "Thank you." Her voice came out smaller than she intended. The elevator ride to 18 felt longer this time. She watched the numbers climb, her reflection in the mirrored walls. "You belong here," she told herself. "Margaret chose you. You belong." The doors opened. Patricia waited, perfectly put together as before. "Good morning, Lila. Ready for your first day?" "I think so. You'll be fine." Patricia's smile was genuine. "Follow me." They walked past Margaret's office to a smaller room down the hall. It had a window not as big as Margaret's but real, filled with natural light, a desk with a computer, a bookshelf, a small plant in the corner. "This is your office," Patricia said. Lila stopped breathing. "My office? Of course, you're assistant to the CEO. That comes with an office." Patricia gestured inside. "Computers all set up. Login credentials are in that envelope on the desk. Margaret wants to see you at 9:30 for orientation." "Okay." Lila stepped inside. It was the size of her entire apartment, maybe bigger. Coffee's in the break room, 2 doors down on the right. Bathrooms across the hall. "If you need anything, my extension is 201. Just pick up your phone and dial it." Patricia left. Lila stood alone in her office. She walked to the window. The view showed buildings and streets, the morning rush of people heading to work. 48 hours ago, she'd been one of them. Invisible, struggling. Now she was up here, looking down. She sat at the desk. The chair was soft, ergonomic, probably cost more than her couch. The computer was new, a sleek monitor with a wireless keyboard. She opened the envelope. Inside, login credentials, an employee ID badge with her name and photo. When did they take that? And a welcome packet. The badge made it real. Lila Grant, assistant to the CEO. She pinned it to her shirt. At 9:30 she knocked on Margaret's door. "Come in." Margaret sat at her desk, reading glasses perched on her nose, papers spread everywhere. She looked up and smiled warmly. "There she is, How does it feel? Surreal, Lila admitted. Good, that means you're paying attention. Margaret gestured to the chair. Sit. Let's talk about what comes next. Lila sat. Here's how this works, Margaret began. You'll spend the first month learning, observing, asking questions. I want you in every meeting I take, every grant review, every site visit. You'll see how we operate, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay. People here will underestimate you. They'll see your age, your background, your lack of formal education. They'll assume I made a mistake hiring you. Margaret's voice hardened. Let them think that. Then prove them wrong. Lila nodded, her jaw tightening. I didn't choose you because you're qualified by traditional standards. I chose you because you understand something they never will, what it means to need help and not receive it. That perspective is worth more than any MBA. What if I mess up? You will. Margaret's bluntness was refreshing. Everyone does. The question is whether you learn from it, whether you stay humble and hungry and willing to grow. I will, Lila promised. Good. Now let's meet your team. Margaret stood. Lila followed her down the hall to a conference room. Inside, 5 people sat around a table, 3 women, 2 men, all dressed professionally, all looking successful and accomplished. They looked up as Margaret entered. Their eyes slid to Lila with thinly veiled curiosity and judgment. Everyone. This is Lila Grant. She's my new assistant and will be working closely with me on all foundation business. Margaret went around the table. Lila, meet the team. Marcus, Director of Grant Programs. Lisa, Chief Financial Officer. Jenna, Communications Director. David, Operations Manager. And Rachel, Director of Community Outreach. They each nodded, polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Lila comes from a different background than most of you, Margaret continued. She's going to bring a fresh perspective to our work. I expect all of you to support her as she learns. Of course, Marcus said smoothly. He was mid-40s, expensive suit, slicked back hair. We're happy to help. Though I'm curious, what's your educational background, Lila? The question was a test. Everyone in the room knew it. High school diploma, Lila said clearly. I've been working in service industry for the past 9 years. A flicker of something, surprise, disdain, crossed Marcus's face. Interesting choice, Margaret. Unconventional. The best choices usually are. Margaret's tone left no room for argument. All right everyone, back to work. Lila and I have a busy day. As they left the conference room, Lila heard whispers behind them. She couldn't make out words, but the tone was clear. Who does she think she is? Why did Margaret hire her? She doesn't belong here. Ignore them, Margaret said quietly as they walked. Their opinions don't matter, results do. But as the day progressed, Lila realized ignoring them wouldn't be easy. She sat in on a grant review meeting. Marcus presented proposals from various organizations requesting funding. His language was technical, full of jargon and acronyms Lila didn't understand. The ROI on this youth mentorship program is questionable, Marcus said, flipping through papers. Their overhead costs are at 32%. Industry standard is 25% or below. I recommend we pass. What about outcomes? Lila asked quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. I'm sorry, Marcus's tone was icy. You mentioned costs, but what about outcomes? What results have they achieved? That's factored into ROI, return on investment. I know what ROI means. Lila's voice stayed level. But sometimes numbers don't tell the whole story. What are they actually doing for the kids in the program? Marcus's jaw tightened. According to their metrics, graduation rates improved by 15%, college enrollment by 12%, recidivism down 8%. That sounds good, Lila said. The costs are still too high. Maybe the costs are high because they're doing it right, because they actually care about the kids instead of just checking boxes. Silence fell over the room. Marcus stared at her like she'd slapped him. Margaret leaned back in her chair, a small smile playing at her lips. Interesting point, Lila. Marcus, pull more detailed outcome data. Let's review it again next week before we decide. Marcus's face flushed red. Of course. After the meeting, as people filed out, Marcus stopped next to Lila's chair. A word of advice, he said quietly. You might want to learn how things work here before questioning processes that have been in place for years. I'm not questioning the process, Lila said. I'm questioning whether we're measuring the right things. His eyes went cold. You've been here for 4 hours. I've been doing this for 12 years. I've been poor for 27 years. That's a different kind of education. He walked away without another word. Lila sat alone in the conference room, her heart pounding. She'd just made an enemy on her first day. Maybe that was stupid. Maybe she should have kept quiet, learned the ropes first. But she thought about those kids in the mentorship program. Kids like she'd been. Kids who needed someone to fight for them, not just calculate their cost-benefit ratio. Margaret appeared in the doorway. That was ballsy, she said. Was it wrong? No. It was honest and necessary. Margaret sat down next to her. Marcus is good at his job, but he's been here too long. He's forgotten that numbers represent human lives. You just reminded him. He hates me now. He'll get over it. Or he won't. Either way, you were right to speak up. Margaret's hand rested on Lila's shoulder. This work isn't about being liked. It's about being effective. About making sure money goes to the right places for the right reasons. Sometimes that means asking uncomfortable questions. I don't want to be the troublemaker. You're not the troublemaker. You're the truth teller. There's a difference. Margaret stood. Come on. I want to show you something. They took the elevator down to the parking garage. Margaret's car was a modest sedan. Lila had expected something flashier. Where are we going? You'll see. They drove through downtown, then east. The buildings got shorter, older. The neighborhoods got rougher. Graffiti appeared on walls, boarded windows. People huddled on corners despite the cold. Lila recognized this area. It looked like where she'd grown up. Margaret pulled up in front of a community center. A squat brick building with bars on the windows but fresh paint on the doors. This is Eastwood Youth Hub, Margaret said as they got out. We funded their renovation 3 years ago. They run after-school programs, job training, counseling, everything these kids need. Inside, the center buzzed with life. Kids everywhere playing basketball in the gym, doing homework at tables, talking with counselors. The walls were covered with bright murals and motivational posters. A woman approached, mid-30s, warm smile, tired eyes. Margaret, you didn't tell me you were coming. Surprise visit. Keisha, this is Lila, my new assistant. Lila, meet Keisha Monroe. She runs this place. They shook hands. Keisha's grip was firm, her palms calloused. Welcome to the chaos. Keisha laughed. We've got 42 kids here today, double what we had last year. That's wonderful, Margaret said. It's overwhelming. We're bursting at the seams. Already turned away 12 kids this week because we don't have space or staff. Keisha's smile faltered. We applied for expansion funding, but heard it might not come through. Something about overhead costs being too high. Lila and Margaret exchanged glances. We're reviewing that decision, Margaret said carefully. Can you show Lila around? Keisha led them through the center. Each room told a story. Kids learning to code, practicing for GED tests, talking to therapists, preparing for job interviews. The staff looked exhausted but passionate. The kids looked engaged, hopeful, alive. In one corner, a teenage girl sat alone, crying quietly. A counselor sat with her, talking softly, holding her hand. That's Marcy, Keisha said quietly. Her stepdad beats her. We're working with CPS, but the system moves slow. Meanwhile, this is the only safe place she has. 4 days a week she comes here straight after school and stays until we close at 9. Lila's throat went tight. She saw herself in that girl, saw all the kids she'd grown up with, saw the ones who'd made it, and the ones who hadn't. If we had more funding, Keisha continued, we could stay open 7 days a week, hire more counselors, add more programs, reach more kids like Marcy, who desperately need somewhere to go. They finished the tour, said goodbye, drove back to the foundation in silence. Back in Margaret's office, Lila finally spoke. That's what Marcus wanted to cut. That center. Those kids, yes. Because overhead costs are too high, yes. But Keisha's only asking for enough to keep the lights on and staff paid. That's not overhead. That's the bare minimum to function. Margaret smiled. Now you're beginning to understand the problem. People like Marcus look at spreadsheets. You look at Marcy crying in the corner with nowhere else to go. Both perspectives matter, but yours matters more. Why? Because you remember what it's like to be Marcy. Marcus never will. Lila thought about the grant review meeting, about Marcus dismissing the program because numbers didn't align perfectly. I want to fight for that funding, she said. Then fight for it. Build your case. Gather evidence. Present it at next week's meeting. Show Marcus, show everyone, why this matters. What if I fail? Then you learn and try again. But my money's on you succeeding. Margaret's eyes sparkled. You've got something Marcus and the others don't. You've got fire. Use it. That night, Lila stayed late in her office. She read through Eastwood Youth Hub's proposal 3 times, pulled outcome data, looked at testimonials from kids and families, built a presentation that told the story behind the numbers. Patricia poked her head in at 7. You're still here? Yeah, working on something. Margaret told me you went to Eastwood today. That place does good work. It does, and it might not get funded. Patricia leaned against the doorframe. Can I give you some advice, please? Marcus has been here for 12 years. He's smart, connected, and used to getting his way. If you go up against him, it won't be easy. I know, but Patricia smiled slightly. Margaret didn't hire you to be easy. She hired you to shake things up. So shake them up. Just be ready for the consequences. What kind of consequences? The kind where people either respect you or try to push you out. There's usually not much middle ground. After Patricia left, Lila sat in the quiet office, looking out at the city lights. She thought about her first day, about Marcus's hostility, about Marcy crying in that community center, about her mother working herself to death while people looked through her like glass. She pulled out her phone and texted Tessa. First day was intense, made some enemies, but I think I'm doing the right thing. Tessa responded immediately. You always do the right thing. That's who you are. Proud of you, Lila. Lila smiled. She looked at her computer screen. The presentation half finished. Data scattered across multiple windows. All right, Mom, she thought. Let's show them what kindness with backbone looks like. And she got back to work. The week passed in a blur. Lila attended meetings where people spoke in acronyms and assumed everyone understood complex financial structures. She sat through budget reviews that made her head spin. She read grant proposals until her eyes burned. But she also visited 3 more community organizations, met families who relied on Doyle Foundation funding, heard stories that broke her heart and fueled her determination, and she finished her presentation for Eastwood Youth Hub. Friday morning, the grant review meeting. Lila arrived early, her printed materials organized in a folder, her hands sweating despite the cold. Marcus was already there, of course. He barely glanced at her. Still here, I see. Where else would I be? Most people who challenge me on day 1 usually realize they're in over their heads. They quit within a month. I'm not most people, clearly. His tone suggested that wasn't a compliment. The others filtered in. Lisa, Jenna, David, Rachel, then Margaret, carrying her coffee, looking refreshed and ready. All right, let's get started. Marcus, where are we? We have final recommendations on 12 proposals, 9 approvals, 3 denials. Eastwood Youth Hub remains in the denial column due to overhead concerns. Lila has something to present on that one. Margaret said calmly. Every pair of eyes turned to her. Marcus's expression could have frozen water. Lila stood. Her legs felt shaky, but she locked her knees, kept her voice steady. I visited Eastwood Youth Hub on Monday. I met the director, the staff, and the kids they serve. I've also reviewed their proposal, outcome data, and comparable programs in the area. She distributed her handouts. What I found was that calling their costs overhead misrepresents what they're actually doing. Marcus leaned back. The numbers speak for themselves. Let me speak for the numbers then. Lila pulled up her first slide on the screen. Yes, 32% of their budget goes to operational costs, but let's break that down. 12% is staffing. They employ counselors, teachers, and security. Kids in this neighborhood need all 3. 10% is facility maintenance. Keeping a building safe and heated in Portland winters isn't cheap. The remaining 10% covers utilities, insurance, and supplies. She clicked to the next slide. Now let's look at outcomes. Last year, Eastwood served 87 kids regularly. Of those, 94% stayed in school. 78% improved their grades. 41 graduated high school in a neighborhood where the dropout rate is 60%. 22 enrolled in college or trade programs. 8 got full-time jobs with livable wages. Jenna leaned forward. Those are strong numbers. They are. But here's what matters more. Lila's voice grew stronger. I met a girl named Marcy. She's 15. Her home life is dangerous. Eastwood is the only safe place she has, 4 days a week. If we don't fund them, they can't stay open 7 days. Marcy and kids like her have nowhere to go on the days the center's closed. That's anecdotal, Marcus said dismissively. We can't make funding decisions based on individual stories. Why not? Lila turned to him. Aren't individual stories exactly what we're supposed to be impacting? Isn't that the point of all this? The point is sustainable, scalable impact. One girl's story doesn't. One girl's story is 42 girls' stories. 42 kids who came to that center this week alone. That's not anecdotal. That's a pattern. That's data with faces attached. The room was silent. Lila clicked to her final slide, a simple comparison chart. Here are 3 other programs we funded this year. All have overhead costs between 28% and 35%. None were questioned. None were denied. The only difference between them and Eastwood is that Eastwood serves a poorer neighborhood and doesn't have fancy presentations or board members with connections. Marcus's face went red. That's not. Isn't it? Lila kept her voice level. Look at the data. Same cost structures. Similar outcomes. Different neighborhoods. Different decisions. Margaret spoke for the first time. Marcus, do you have a response? He shuffled papers, jaw tight. The comparison isn't entirely fair. Those other programs have different scopes. They all serve youth. They all provide mentorship and education. The scope is identical. Lila wasn't backing down. The only difference is perception. This is exactly the problem with hiring someone with no experience. Marcus's composure cracked. You don't understand how careful we have to be with funding decisions. How much scrutiny we face. How one bad investment can damage our reputation. I understand that kids are dying in the streets while we worry about reputation. Lila's voice rose. I understand that Marcy has 3 more years until she's 18 and can escape her situation, if she survives that long. I understand that this foundation exists to help people like her, not to protect our image. Enough. Margaret's single word cut through the tension. Both of you sit down. Lila sat, her heart hammered. She'd gone too far, lost her temper. Proven Marcus right about her inexperience. Margaret looked around the table. Show of hands. Who votes to approve Eastwood's funding? Jenna's hand went up immediately, then David's. Rachel hesitated, then raised hers. Lisa stayed neutral, waiting. 3 votes. That was majority from the directors. Margaret's hand went up. I vote yes as well. Motion passes. Eastwood gets their funding full amount requested, plus a 10% increase to expand hours. Marcus stood abruptly. This is a mistake. Noted. Anything else? He grabbed his materials and left without another word. After he was gone, Margaret looked at Lila. That was intense. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. You did exactly what needed doing. You challenged our assumptions. You brought human perspective to a numbers game. You fought for kids who can't fight for themselves. Margaret's expression softened. That's why you're here. Jenna spoke up. For what it's worth, I thought your presentation was solid. You made a good case. Thank you. But Marcus isn't going to forget this. He doesn't handle being challenged well. I figured. After the meeting ended and everyone left, Margaret gestured for Lila to stay. Close the door. Lila did. Her stomach churned. Margaret studied her for a long moment. How do you feel? Honestly. Terrified. I just made a powerful enemy on my first week. Yes, you did. But you also just saved a program that helps dozens of kids. You proved you have backbone, and you showed the other directors that new perspectives matter. Margaret smiled. I'd say that's a successful first week. Marcus hates me. Marcus is threatened by you. There's a difference. He's been the smartest person in the room for a long time. Now someone's questioning him, and he doesn't know how to handle it. What if he tries to push me out? Let him try. Margaret's voice turned to steel. I hired you, Lila. I believe in you. And as long as you keep doing what you did today, bringing heart and truth to this work, you have my full support. Lila felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This job is going to be hard. People will underestimate you, judge you, try to make you feel like you don't belong. You'll have to prove yourself over and over. I know. But if you stay true to why you're here, if you remember that kid crying in the corner, that mother working herself to death, that old woman shoveling snow while people walk past, you'll be fine. Lila nodded, throat too tight to speak. Go home. Rest this weekend. Monday we start round 2. Lila left the office exhausted but oddly energized. She'd survived her first week. Made waves, made enemies, but also made a difference. In the elevator down she caught her reflection in the mirrored walls. She looked tired but also alive, purposeful. Her phone buzzed. A text from Keisha at Eastwood. Margaret just called. We got the funding. Full amount plus more. Thank you for fighting for us. For these kids, you're an angel. Lila leaned against the elevator wall, reading the message 3 times. She thought about Marcy, about having somewhere safe to go 7 days a week now, about 42 kids who'd keep having a refuge. Not an angel, she texted back. Just someone who remembers what it's like. Outside snow was falling again. But this time when Lila stepped into it, she didn't feel the cold as sharply. She had a purpose now, a place where her voice mattered, where her past wasn't baggage but perspective. She pulled her mother's scarf tighter and walked toward the train station, a small smile on her face despite everything. 1 week down, a lifetime of work ahead. But for the first time in years, Lila Grant felt like she was exactly where she belonged. 6 months passed. Lila learned fast. She attended workshops on non-profit management, read books on philanthropy and social impact, shadowed each department head to understand how the foundation operated. But more importantly, she kept visiting communities, kept meeting the people Doyle Foundation served, kept bringing their stories back to the boardroom. Marcus continued to resist her. Their meetings often became battlegrounds, him armed with data and precedent, her armed with stories and moral clarity. Sometimes he won, sometimes she did. Margaret let them fight it out, intervening only when necessary. You balance each other, Margaret told them once, after a particularly heated debate. Marcus keeps us financially sound, Lila keeps us human. I need both. It was grudging respect at best, but it was something. The other directors gradually warmed to her. Jenna started copying her on key communications. David invited her to operations meetings. Rachel asked her opinion on community outreach strategies. Lisa remained professionally distant but fair. Lila settled into the rhythm of the work, started feeling less like an imposter and more like she belonged. But something still nagged at her. One evening in late autumn, she sat in Margaret's office after everyone else had gone home. What's on your mind? Margaret asked, looking up from her paperwork. I've been thinking about last winter, about how you went out in the cold to test people's kindness. What about it? You found one person in 3 hours, one out of hundreds who walked past. Lila leaned forward. That's not okay. That's not how it should be. No, it's not. But that's the world we live in. What if we could change it? The idea had been forming for weeks, growing stronger. What if we could create a program that encouraged people to help each other, especially during winter when it's most dangerous? Margaret set down her pen, interested. What kind of program? Lila pulled out her notebook. She'd been sketching ideas, doing research, building a framework. It's winter again in 2 months. It'll be brutal cold just like last year. Homeless populations are growing. Elderly people living alone. Day laborers working outside. They're all at risk. She flipped pages. What if Doyle Foundation launched a winter kindness initiative? We distribute warm drinks, blankets, hand warmers, basic supplies to people who need them. But we don't just do it ourselves, we recruit volunteers. Businesses, schools, community groups. We make it a movement. Margaret listened, her expression unreadable. Lila continued, words tumbling out faster now. We set up distribution points in high-need areas, train volunteers, partner with shelters and community centers, create an app where people can report someone who needs help, and we dispatch volunteers. Make it easy for people to do what I did. Stop and help. That's ambitious, Margaret said. I know, maybe too ambitious for my first major project, but I didn't say it was too ambitious. I said it was ambitious. There's a difference. Margaret smiled. Keep going. We call it Warm Hands Initiative. Focus on Portland this winter as a pilot. If it works, expand to other cities next year. The goal isn't just to distribute supplies, it's to rebuild the idea that we look out for each other, that kindness matters, that no one should be invisible. Lila stopped suddenly, self-conscious. Is that stupid? Too idealistic? It's exactly right. Margaret's voice was thick with emotion. It's what I hoped you'd bring to this foundation. Not just helping people but changing how we think about helping. Making it normal again. Expected. So you think it could work? I think it's brilliant, and I think you should lead it. Lila's heart leaped. Really? You conceived it. You understand why it matters. You'll fight for it when things get hard. Margaret opened her laptop. Let's look at budget. What do you need? They spent the next 2 hours planning. Margaret asked sharp questions, poked holes in the logistics, pushed Lila to think bigger and more strategically, but her enthusiasm never wavered. Present this to the board next week, Margaret said finally. Full proposal, budget breakdown, implementation timeline. If they approve it, we launch December 1st. That's only 6 weeks away. Then you'd better get moving. Lila worked like she'd never worked before. She built partnerships with homeless shelters, soup kitchens, community centers, recruited volunteers from colleges and corporations, designed the supply distribution system, created the app with help from a tech company that donated the development. Marcus, predictably, opposed it. This is outside our normal scope, he argued at the board meeting. We fund existing organizations. We don't run programs directly. We should, Lila countered. Sometimes the program you need doesn't exist yet. Sometimes you have to create it. The overhead costs are minimal compared to impact. We're leveraging volunteers and donations foundation. Cost is primarily coordination and supplies. The return in terms of lives potentially saved and community engagement is enormous. Jenna spoke up. I think it's worth trying. Winter's coming. People will die without help. If we can prevent even a few deaths, isn't it worth the investment? The vote was close. 4 in favor, 3 against, but it passed. Warm Hands Initiative was happening. The next 5 weeks were chaos. Lila barely slept. She coordinated volunteers, managed supply deliveries, troubleshot problems, did media interviews, trained team leaders. Margaret gave her 2 staff members to help, young energetic people who believed in the mission. Tessa volunteered to help with social media. Word spread. The Oregonian ran a feature. Local TV covered it. Donations poured in. Blankets, coats, hand warmers, thermoses. People wanted to help. They just needed someone to show them how. December 1st, launch day. 6 distribution points across the city. 50 volunteers at each location. Vans loaded with supplies. The app went live. Lila stood at the Eastwood location, deliberately chosen as the flagship site. This was where she'd grown up, where people like her mother had struggled and been overlooked. Not anymore. The first person approached at 7:15 a.m. An elderly man, coat thin and torn, shivering violently. A volunteer greeted him warmly. Good morning, sir. We're here to help. Can we offer you some hot cocoa and a warm coat? The man stared, confused. Is this free? Completely free, no strings, just people helping people. They gave him cocoa in a thermal mug he could keep, a thick winter coat, hand warmers, a blanket, information about shelters and meal programs. The man's eyes filled with tears. Why are you doing this? The volunteer, a college student who'd given up her Saturday morning, smiled. Because everyone deserves to be warm. Because you matter. Lila watched from a few feet away, her own eyes burning. This was why she'd fought so hard. Throughout the day, people kept coming. Homeless individuals, day laborers, elderly folks living alone. A single mother with 3 kids in a car with no heat. Each one greeted with warmth and dignity. Each one given supplies and kindness. The app lit up with requests from across the city. Volunteers dispatched like first responders. Someone spotted an elderly woman, waiting for a bus in inadequate clothing. A homeless man sleeping in a doorway. A group of day laborers huddling for warmth. By evening they'd helped over 400 people, and that was just day 1. Margaret showed up around 6 p.m. Just as volunteers were packing up. She walked through the site, talking to volunteers, looking at the remaining supplies. Then she found Lila, who was coordinating the next day's schedule. How do you feel? Margaret asked. Exhausted, overwhelmed, happy. Lila gestured at the scene around them. Look at this. All these people who chose to spend their Saturday helping strangers. You built this. You made it happen. We made it happen. You believed in it, funded it, supported it when Marcus tried to kill it. Margaret's smile was soft. Remember last winter when I stood in the cold and only one person stopped? Yeah. Today 300 people stopped. 300 volunteers gave their time. Businesses donated supplies. The whole city is paying attention. Margaret's voice cracked. You didn't just help people today, Lila. You reminded everyone that kindness still exists, that we're not alone, that we can take care of each other. Lila hugged her, both of them crying right there on the street while volunteers packed up around them. Thank you, Lila whispered, for seeing me, for giving me this chance. Thank you for being worth seeing, for proving me right. Winter deepened. Warm Hands Initiative ran 7 days a week through February. They helped over 8,000 people, distributed 15,000 coats, 20,000 blankets, uncounted hot drinks and meals, connected hundreds to permanent housing and services. But the numbers weren't what mattered most. What mattered was the shift in culture. People started noticing those in need instead of looking away. The app had a feature where anyone could report someone who needed help, and people used it. Strangers checking on strangers. The idea spreading like warmth through a cold city. Marcus never fully came around, but even he had to admit the program was successful. And when budget time came, he didn't oppose continued funding. Media coverage brought national attention. Other cities reached out. Could they replicate the program? Would Doyle Foundation help them start their own chapters? Margaret tasked Lila with expansion planning. By next winter, Warm Hands would be in 5 cities. Within 3 years, 20. One night in late February, Lila sat in her office, still surreal to think of it as her office, looking out at the snowy city. She'd come so far in 1 year, from invisible waitress to non-profit leader, from struggling to survive, to helping thousands survive. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is Keisha from Eastwood Youth Hub. Marcy, the girl you met, just got accepted to Reed College, full scholarship. She wanted you to know, you helped make that possible. Lila stared at the message, tears streaming down her face. She thought about chain reactions, about how 1 cup of warm tea had led to all of this, how stopping for one old woman had changed hundreds of lives, thousands if you counted all the people helped by Warm Hands. Her mother's voice echoed, kindness costs nothing, baby, but it changes everything. She'd been right. One small act, one moment of choosing to see instead of ignore. That's all it took. Lila pulled out her notebook and started writing ideas for the next initiative, because this was just the beginning. There was so much more to do, so many more people to help. But tonight she let herself feel proud, feel successful, feel like she'd honored her mother's memory in the best way possible, by proving that kindness wasn't weakness, it was power. The power to change the world one warm heart at a time. 1 year later, December again. Snow fell on Portland, thick and heavy just like it had 2 years ago. But this time, Lila didn't trudge through it exhausted and freezing. She drove through it in a modest car, nothing fancy but reliable and warm. So much had changed. Warm Hands Initiative was in 12 cities now, helping tens of thousands. Doyle Foundation had doubled its community programs. Lila had been promoted to Director of Community Impact, the youngest director in the foundation's history. She'd moved to a small apartment in a better neighborhood. Nothing luxurious but safe and heated. Tessa still lived with her. Lila had paid off their old debts and helped her roommate enroll in nursing school. Margaret had become like family, a mentor, a friend, a second mother. They had dinner together every week, talked about work and life and everything in between. But today was special. Today was the 2-year anniversary of that moment when Lila had stopped to help a stranger in the snow. She'd planned something, a surprise for Margaret. At noon, she picked Margaret up from the office. Where are we going? Margaret asked as they drove east. You'll see. They ended up at Eastwood Youth Hub. It looked different now. Expanded, renovated, thriving. Doyle Foundation had funded a major upgrade. The building practically glowed with fresh paint and new windows. Inside, the place was packed. Kids everywhere, volunteers helping them, staff coordinating programs. Keisha met them at the door, grinning. Right on time. What's going on? Margaret asked. Come see. They walked to the main assembly hall. Inside it was decorated with banners and balloons, folding chairs set up theater style, and sitting in those chairs dozens of people. Kids, parents, staff, volunteers, people whose lives had been touched by Doyle Foundation, by Warm Hands Initiative, by the ripple effects of one kind act. 2 years ago. What is this? Margaret whispered, Lila guided her to a seat in the front row. Then she walked to the small stage. "Thank you all for coming," she said into the microphone. Her voice only shook slightly. 2 years ago today, I was a waitress, barely scraping by. I saw an old woman struggling in the snow, and I did something simple. I gave her a cup of warm tea. She looked at Margaret. That woman was Margaret Doyle. She'd gone out into the cold to test whether kindness still existed, whether anyone would help a stranger who couldn't help them back. Murmurs of understanding rippled through the crowd. That one small act changed my life. Margaret gave me a job, a purpose, a chance to matter. But more importantly, she taught me that kindness isn't just about individual moments. It's about creating systems that make kindness possible, that make caring for each other the norm instead of the exception. Lila gestured to the crowd. Everyone in this room has been touched by that philosophy, by the programs we've built together, and today we want to say thank you. One by one, people came to the microphone. Marcy, the teenager from Eastwood, now a college freshman, talked about how the center saved her life, how having somewhere safe to go kept her alive until she could escape her situation. A homeless veteran described receiving a coat and blanket from warm hands, then being connected to housing services. He had an apartment now, a job, stability. A single mother talked about the winter assistance program that kept her family fed and warm during her hardest months. An elderly man spoke about the volunteer who checked on him weekly after he was spotted struggling to shovel his walk. That volunteer became a friend. He wasn't alone anymore. Story after story, life after life. Each one connected back to that moment 2 years ago, to one cup of warm tea, to one woman's test and one girl's compassion. By the time they finished, Margaret was openly crying. So was Lila. So were half the people in the room. Then Keisha brought out a large covered frame. She pulled off the cloth, revealing a plaque, the Margaret Doyle and Lila Grant Community Center, built on the belief that everyone deserves to be seen, to be helped, to be valued. Dedicated December 2026, this building, this place that's helped hundreds of kids, exists because of both of you. Keisha said, because Margaret tested the world's kindness, because Lila answered that test, and because together you built something that makes kindness sustainable. The room erupted in applause. After the ceremony, after hugs and thank yous and photos, Margaret and Lila sat alone in Keisha's office. You did all this? Margaret asked. We did all this. You started it by taking that risk, by going out in the snow. I found one kind person. You turned that into a movement. No, Lila's voice was firm. You turned it into a movement by investing in me, by believing that my perspective mattered, by giving me the tools and platform to make change. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. I'm stepping down next year, Margaret said suddenly. Lila's head snapped up. What? I'm 74. I've been doing this for 30 years. It's time. Margaret's smile was peaceful. And I'm going to recommend you as my successor to the board. They'll need formal review, but you're the one I believe in. Margaret, it should be you. I'm not ready. I'm too young too. You're exactly ready. You've proven yourself 1,000 times over. You understand this work in ways I never could. And you have the vision to take the foundation into the future. Lila felt tears building again. I don't know if I can. You can. Because you remember where you came from. Because you'll never stop seeing the people others ignore. Because kindness isn't a strategy for you, it's who you are. They hugged, both of them crying and laughing at the same time. Later that evening, Lila drove through the city alone. Snow was really coming down now, blanketing everything in white. She thought about everything that had happened, about how randomly life could change, how one decision to stop, to help, to care, could redirect an entire existence. On impulse she pulled over on a quiet street, got out of her car, reached into the back seat for the thermos she always kept there now, filled with hot cocoa. She walked down the sidewalk until she saw him, an elderly man sitting against a building, huddled under a thin blanket, trying to escape the wind. Lila knelt down beside him. Hi, I'm Lila. It's really cold out here. Can I offer you some hot cocoa? The man looked up, surprised, suspicious. Why? Because everyone deserves to be warm. Because you matter. She poured cocoa into the thermos cup, handed it to him. The man took it with shaking hands, brought it to his lips. Steam rose around his face. "Thank you," he whispered. "You're welcome. There's a shelter 2 blocks that way. They have beds tonight, and it's heated. Can I call you a ride? I don't have money. It's free, just people helping people." She made the call, waited with him until the van arrived, gave him her card with information about services, told him to reach out if he needed anything. As the van drove away, the man looked back through the window. He raised his hand, a small wave, a gesture of gratitude. Lila waved back. She stood on the snowy sidewalk, the cold biting at her face, and felt completely warm inside. This was it. This was why she did everything. Not for the title or the salary or the recognition, for this moment, for the chance to see someone, to help someone, to remind them they weren't alone. Her phone buzzed, a text from Margaret. "Thank you for today, for everything. You've given me something I'd lost. Hope that the world can be kind again." Lila smiled and texted back. "You gave me that hope first. I'm just passing it forward." She got back in her car and continued driving. Past community centers and shelters, past warm hands distribution points, past buildings that held programs and services that helped thousands, but also past individuals, people on street corners, waiting for buses, shoveling walks, struggling through the cold, each one visible to her now, each one mattering. She thought about chain reactions, about how her mother's kindness had shaped her, how Margaret's test had found her, how 1 cup of tea had grown into a foundation of caring that now reached across cities. Kindness cost nothing, her mother had said, but it changes everything. She'd been right. 1 cup at a time, 1 person at a time, 1 moment of choosing to see instead of looking away. That's how you change the world. Not with grand gestures or massive donations, though those helped, but with small consistent acts of caring, with refusing to let people be invisible, with stopping when everyone else walks past. Snow continued to fall on Portland. The city lights glowed warm against the darkness, and somewhere in that vast urban landscape, thousands of people were a little warmer, a little safer, a little more seen because kindness had become contagious. Because one waitress had stopped to help one old woman in the snow, and everything had changed. Lila drove home through the winter night, her mother's scarf around her neck, Margaret's words in her heart, and the knowledge that tomorrow she'd wake up and do it all again. Because that's what love looks like in action. That's what kindness looks like when it refuses to freeze. That's what happens when anyone decides that people matter more than convenience, that compassion is worth the cost, that everyone deserves to be warm. 1 cup of tea at a time, 1 heart at a time, until the whole world glows with the heat of human connection, until no one is invisible anymore. Until kindness is no longer rare, it's just how we live. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Hit like and subscribe for more stories that remind us why humanity is worth believing in. Because kindness isn't dead, it just needs people brave enough to keep it alive. What small act of kindness will you do today? Let us know in the comments below.